Author here, he wrote much of the book, and when he was having the foreword for the book, he and Robson Lowe had lunch together, and they discussed this catalogue as part of the detail for the foreword of this book. The next key catalogue was the Moroni John Fox catalogue of New York in 1952. And then the Van Elken sale of Harmer's, New York in 1956. And after that, the first Knox sale in Robson Lowe in 1979. You can see here the number of items that were in these catalogues of Mulready caricatures and propaganda envelopes. Pretty amazing, actually, that even in those days, there were some key players collecting these fascinating material. A few more key catalogues. The second Knox sale in December 79. The D.S. Phillips auction. Charles Hahn, the gentleman's collection from this book. And then the Alcott sale from Phillips in 1989. Richie Bodley's collection, again from this book, in March 92. Hassan Shaida, Dr. Ambrose, Donald Turner's collection in March 94. This is not, be careful, this is not David Turner who wrote the book on ocean penny postage. This is Don Turner in March 94. And then the Herald collection in September 94. And last not least, the Staff collection in Cavendish in 95, Louis Grunin in May 04, and another sale at Robert Siegel in April 10. Interestingly, again, the sheer numbers of items that were in each of these sales. It was mentioned yesterday that the style of entries in catalogue has changed over time. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because it was gone through very clearly by John and James yesterday. But prior to 45, it was a simple text. Then it became more detailed description with black and white images, then some color images, and then after 2000, for any items of this type, there were full-size color images with dedicated full pages in catalogues. Just an example for a Forbes Comic number 1 envelope used on the 28th of May, 1840. Started off in the Yates collection, lot 206, simple text, hardly would know exactly what it was. And perhaps this is an indicator for the future that I'd like to mention now and will reiterate again. If AI is going to be the future for gathering data, will AI find this particular Yates catalogue and this description for this item? Or would it be missed? If they're looking for images that match, there is no image in the Yates sale, so would it actually be found in an AI-generated collator of image? In the Holland sale, it was a black and white image and a bigger description. And by the time the image finished up in the Siegel sale in 2012, you had a lovely color image and a big description and all the information fully detailed. It is now the style for items of this type to be in this format. So, summary of the results of my efforts over the last few years. I've gone through 19,956 auction catalogues. I don't know how I'm still standing here, actually. Of those, 14,608 were at the Royal. Others I've been looking at online and reviewing digital versions. Interesting, over 2,000 catalogues contained an item for recording for the book. And over the 85 years, of catalogues that I've been looking at between 1940 and 2024, 17,217 items have been recorded. And that works out at 202 items a year. 1,016 unique items have been found. These are either different designs, different states, different reproductions, but over 1,000 unique items. And to my mind, that sort of population number is matched also by the propaganda envelopes and the Civil War items I mentioned of the particular categories. In the book, 867 Mulready caricatures and pictorial envelopes are recorded. And this is in comparison to 305 in the Bodley Hahn book. So we have improved significantly on the information and the data that we've recorded. How many Mulready caricatures and propaganda envelopes have been found in each year of catalogues? Remember, this is just auction catalogues. This is not dealer lists or anything, just the auction catalogues. 202 per year, and it goes up and down, but it's pretty even in practical terms. In 1949, you had the big peak from the Yates sale, and then in 1994, as I mentioned earlier, it was a bumper year for different sales for the Ambrose, Turner, and Herald sales. But generally, a couple of hundred items per year to add to the data bank. And over the years, the incidence of finding new things has plateaued. So it seemed a very opportune time now to make the publication. There's still about a 1% a year additional items being found. And I will mention something later on about that today. But here is an indication that I think it's a good time to write a book like this. There's not much new things to find, as far as I can perceive. But as always, as soon as a publication is made, something new has been found. And since the cut-off date at the end of December last year, 4 new items have been found. So there is always something new to find, and perhaps another generation can write the 3rd edition of the book in another 40 years' time. So now a few pictures. I mentioned earlier, I like a picture book. Everybody knows what a Mulready envelope and letter sheet looks like, but just for the sake of including it, here is an item which was sold by Robin a couple of weeks ago, a first day Mulready envelope. But perhaps what was interesting is that almost immediately there was ridicule heaped upon the design. And on the first day, there was a Mulready actually sent locally in London from the Wallace Knott's collection, which had already had hand-drawn editions as a sort of nominal caricature already. So immediately, people were thinking about having a caricature of the Mulready envelope. I should perhaps point out here, if I can make this lovely system work, this code here, HDMUL02. This is a code, or a type of code, we have allocated to every single item in the book. Perhaps this is my technical background that is coming out here, but I was keen to try and have a numbering system which could be used by auction houses, dealers, or anybody else to actually specify a particular copy of an item for the future. So all the caricatures all have a unique code, every single one. And I will explain that a little more as I go through. But for the book, these are a few hand-drawn Mulready caricatures, and this is the second one we included in the book. So it has an 02 code after HD standing for hand-drawn Mulready 02, and then the date of use. Also, the first day, somebody decided to hand colour a Mulready. So already an interesting shift in style. Again, a code, this time number 1 in the book. Another one with hand-drawn additions and embellishments sent on the first Sunday, number 5 in the book. An item from Chris Jarvis's own personal collection, and having talked to him a lot about it, after all, he was one of the original authors here, and he very kindly wrote the foreword to the new book, and it's very nice to see a continuation from the first book into this current version. He also has been collecting these caricatures ever since he wrote the book in 1984, and he has a wonderful collection. But perhaps, oh, Mike, what's happened? Pictures disappeared. Ah. No. No. Disappeared? No, it's like that. Oh, well. No, it's disappeared. Sorry. It's gone. Don't worry. Anyway, I'll show you here, if I can. This was a caricature written to Mr. Mulready himself on the 6th of June, 1840. And interestingly, the anonymous sender put a little note in the side, "What an ass you must be to make such a thing." So already other people were not very happy with Mr. Mulready's efforts. The earliest published caricature was on the 13th of May, 1840, produced by Robert Hume in Edinburgh. Just a week after the Mulready caricature was produced, the Mulready envelope was produced. Amazing that he could produce such a detailed caricature so quickly and to have this being sold. An incredible effort and an entrepreneurial spirit. Sorry. The earliest English caricature on the 22nd of May, used within London in Robin's collection, is of the Falls comic number 1. So there were the two centres of production of caricatures, first in Edinburgh and then secondly in London. Again, I mentioned the code for comic envelope. Number 1, the first one of this design, dated the 22nd of May. So this is a unique code for this particular copy. The caricatures were introduced in May 1840. They were achieved initial success, but after a few months, the use declined. And here you can see the pattern of use. Quite interesting, really. While a few were used in 1842, 1843, 1844, they really were very few. So in practical terms, they were a big success and has really declined. A few examples, just to give you an idea of what these things look like. The Falls company in Piccadilly, they produced a series of 10 designs apart from the comic envelope I just showed you. And we found 91 used copies of this particular series in the 10 designs, across the 10 designs, against 41 which were listed in the Bodley, Jarvis and Hahn book. So over double. Again, the code Falls National Series number 5, the 6th chronological copy of this particular design, dated the 26th of December 1840. Now we did use the UK system for dates. I wonder if in hindsight perhaps this was an error and we should have used the American system. Anyway, the way it is the UK code. It is, after all, a British book.
I can work it out.
Another example from the Southgate series of 6 envelopes, very popular. We've found 228 different used copies across the 6 designs, compared with 79 in the Bodley, Jarvis and Hahn book. Once again, the code, Southgate number 1, the first one in the chronological series of this particular design, dated the 30th of May, 1840. Mr. Spooner, he produced a series of 14 envelopes. This is an example of number 3, dated in 12th of October, 1840. Again, 163 copies we've found against 58 listed previously. Once again, you can see these items have been collected by big collectors over the years. So it's not unusual to find these items in large collections. I mentioned Hume's number 1 caricature, Britannia seated on an egg. Some people have called this Britannia seated on a pig. And if you actually look at, instead of the lion of a Mulready envelope, you can see there is a pig here that Britannia is sitting on. However, it's normally classed as Britannia seated on an egg. This is state 2B. Now, what we've found is 27 different used copies compared to 7 in the Bodley Jarvis book, and 21 different states of this design compared to 6 previously recorded. It is incredible when you look at these designs how many different variations there are. I have to admit it is rather anorak behavior, but after all, people do collect various versions of penny black, plate 5, different states and so on. So this is the same sort of game. This text box above Rowland Hill's caricature head, it actually moves, and there are 12 different positions of this text box relative to his head when you look at the different copies that have been found. Sometimes there is a number 1 in the corner here. The designs change on the flaps. The text on the base flap alters from the different states. So it is incredible detail that one can go into. Many people will just collect one caricature of the Hume comic number 1. Other people like to collect the different states. And Robin, I suppose, is the expert on collecting the different states of the Hume caricatures. Hume's comic number 2, a balloon mail. Again, 27 used copies, amazingly similar number, this time in 16 different states. And here we can see this little bag here has got the words rice, R-I-C-E in it. The text and the font used for the rice changes with different states. The number of dancers here changes. The number of seagulls on the top left changes. The number of sprites on the top right changes. The face of the sun changes. The eyebrows move around. It's incredible, the number of different variations if you study these things carefully. How much detail you want to go into is entirely up to the user, but everything is in the book.
But they have been printed, so it's different printed.
I'm sorry?
Have they been all printed, so it's different printing plates, or are they hand-drawn?
The different states seem to have occurred because he produced one day, one particular state, and then using the different pieces of paper for putting the design on the stone, he was so disorganized in the way he kept his little pieces of paper. or apparently, we believe, so disorganized in using the different pieces of paper. They were put in a different position each time he reprinted. Sometimes he had to produce a new piece of paper, and that's why the rice font changes and so on. We think that's the reason, but he was such a disorganized gentleman that we're not quite sure really what happened. Menzies, another publisher in Edinburgh, and amazingly here, for those who are very observant, there are 27 used copies listed in the book. This afternoon, at the Corbett sale, there is another used copy which we hadn't recorded until today. So it just goes to show there is always something new to find. Mr. Hume, he extended his efforts from producing the caricatures to similar pictorial envelopes and made a lot of money out of producing these wonderful series of pictorial envelopes. And these are all regarded as part of the Mulready Caricature family, so are included in the book. He produced a series of 76 musical envelopes, and one of these is the Robin Burns envelope you see here. We have blown up the size of the music for these envelopes in the book, so those people who are interested in playing the piano or playing the music will be able to do so. Interestingly, also, there is a QR code on the cover, which means that you can play the song to Rowland Hill actually by just looking at the book. So this was a brilliant idea of Chris's to utilize the latest technology for our book. Hume also produced a series of tourist envelopes, amazingly detailed designs, and again, extremely interesting to collect. Again, 21 used copies have been found against the 8 in the Bodley, Jarvis and Hahn book. In France, Morisset produced a beautiful series of pictorial envelopes. First set of 12 for the UK market. Some were used in London. And then a second series which was specifically for the US market. One could say these are not really Mulready caricatures, but they have been regarded as part of the family and so are included in the book. They weren't included in the Bodley, Jarvis and Hahn book, but we feel this is an important addition to the overall story. The punch design, in my view, this is more of a propaganda envelope, but of course it is in this design of a Mulready caricature. So this is really the beginning of my own personal collection, although this particular copy is owned by Robin. So now, looking at other propaganda envelopes, an anti-corn law free trade envelope, lovely design with sheaves of corn, and again the same sort of interesting changes for the different states. Up here you can see the words free trade. That exists as a design with the free trade enclosed by the sheaves of corn, as this example, or when the letters are above the sheaves of corn, so a different state. Also with and without a full stop. So there's actually 4 states of this envelope which looks apparently exactly the same. Again, from my point of view, this is quite interesting, but for others I can well understand it's extremely anorak behavior. Ocean penny postage envelopes, again a large category. This particular example produced by Valentine of Dundee, a State 3 copy. Again, the states differ in terms of the words down the side, whether the words run reading upwards or reading downwards. There are different sets of names on the bottom right, on the bottom left, sometimes in the center, sometimes enclosed in the surround, sometimes not. These were the selling agents that Valentine used for selling these envelopes in the UK market. This particular example used on the 13th of June 1851 from Scotland to Upper Canada from Graham Booth's collection. Another lovely design from League of Universal Brotherhood. Again, different states, again with different inscriptions on the bottom, at the sides, on the reverse, and not. So an interesting example. This one sent to Tasmania. Very unusual usage, obviously. Another example from the Myers design, used from New Zealand to London. Given that these were produced in the UK, fascinating to think that the envelopes were actually taken over to New Zealand and used and brought back and sent back to London. Peace envelopes from Gilpin. An example from State 2. Again, the text changes with the different states. Another example of a Universal Brotherhood envelope. When Valentine produced this envelope, he made a mistake in the first printing where he misspelt arbitration, which is here. He put an extra R in the word. State 1, as it's normally recorded, is correctly spelled. This one is an error from State 0. There are very few copies known from the Duke of Hamilton collection and recently sold in the Syriax sale. Temperance envelopes, again different designs, different texts on the bottom, different states, again with different names of selling agents at the bottom of the envelope. Anti-slavery envelopes. This is from a Marshall design, very unusual, a State 1 copy. This text changes with the different states in the banner headline. A Valentine anti-slavery envelope used from Germany. And then a few examples of Civil War envelopes. So using the experience of how successful it was for promoting these causes, a lot of US publishers produced a wide range of designs for the Union Civil War cause. There are probably 15,000 different designs in existence, 40-odd thousand copies still in circulation, 15,000 used and 25,000 unused, and about half of these in a rather poor condition. But it's a very interesting series to consider collecting. This is one, I'm interested in the copies that were sent overseas, and this is one sent from South Carolina to England from the Walter Hubbard Gold Medal collection. Here is an unusual example, the sole known recorded cover to Russia. Again, an interesting example. I also like the designs for the individual states. Here is a very colorful design produced by Wells for each of the Union states, and there's 34 different designs for the individual states. Charles Magnuson, New York, produced a wide range of designs, not only for the states, but also a broad range of envelopes for the Union cause. This I purchased from the Erivan collection, Iwati collection. So in summary, 20,000 catalogues have been examined, 23,000 entries on a spreadsheet, 3,600 used caricatures and pictorial envelopes and propaganda envelopes have been listed, and the 5,500 hard copy catalogues in my library. And the spreadsheet. What I was trying to do was to create a spreadsheet which shows a comparison of the provenance over time and a listing of the value as it changes over time, indexed for the RPI, and also perhaps not always for the RPI, but for an index value. I took 50 examples in the early days of producing the sheet and created a formula for giving an idea of what the value might be for the future. So this is an ongoing comparison. In the image bank, I have 4,750 pictures and 3,000 propaganda envelopes and 1,000 so far of Union Civil War envelopes. So the spreadsheet, I'm sure you can't read up here, but I've made it a little bigger. Hopefully you'll be able to read this. So for a comic, Ford's Comic Commander 1, dated the 30th of May 1840, one we saw earlier. It was initially in the Yates catalogue, 9th of February 1949, lot number 206, estimated at £15. It was actually sold at £15, so that was fine. And on an RPI basis today, it would be worth 729, and on my little formula, 5,540. So perhaps the value today is something in that region. In the Moroni catalogue, it was obviously listed in dollars, 100 US dollars. I've exchanged at the date of sale, using the exchange rate at the date of sale, became £36 when sold in 1952. That today is an RPI value of 1378, and on the index 24,000. So something is adrift with a formula, I do accept. Then in the Holland sale, as I showed you earlier, it was not sold in 1966. It appeared again in Christie's in 1986 and was estimated at £1,500, sold at £2,400. Then with the additional values for the commission is actually 2621, and on an RPI basis 10,600. Then when it was sold at Siegel in 2012, had an estimate of $5,000 to $7,000, actually sold at 4,750. In pounds, that was 3,393, including commission. On an RPI basis, 5,361. So you can see on an RPI basis, the value has gone up and down quite considerably, which is quite interesting. Perhaps as a important part of the story is telling you about how many have been adjusted. Out of all the copies we found, 10% of Mulready caricatures have been adjusted. Caricatures were held in scrapbooks, some with the adhesive retained, some with the adhesive removed, because as Jonas talked about yesterday, people collected stamps, not the covers in those days. So the stamps were torn off or peeled off or lifted off. When the adhesive was removed and the caricature had then been taken out of the scrapbook, sometimes an adhesive has been added, sometimes recorded as such, sometimes not. What we've tried to do is discover the history of many of these caricatures where adjustments have been made. So hopefully future purchasers of these items, unlike me, wouldn't make so many mistakes. However, 90% are still genuine as far as we believe, and they represent a very worthwhile collection sector. But I have to say, caveat emptor is very wise advice, and I know Carl and very, very keen with his index and in the descriptions that he does, at least for Corin Fila, to be very accurate about what has happened to these items. So I give you 4 examples of what has happened. This was a Southgate number 4, dated 26th of December 1840, sent from Bristol to Barnstable, was our code SOU 436, and we found it in 4 states. First, in the Yates sale, there was no adhesive on the cover. It was actually listed as adhesive removed. It then appeared in Stanley Gibbons in 1968 with an adhesive added. So here's second state. Then it was sold at Western auctions twice, in 73 and in 93, with no adhesive. So the adhesive was removed. No pictures were included in the Western auctions catalogues. But then when it appeared in Cavendish in 2018, it once again had an adhesive attached to it. So take care, is what I'm saying. Is what has really happened to these things. Now, this was an example from my own collection. I didn't know about this particular information until I was talking to Chris Jarvis. But this particular copy, Southgate number 5, 16th of June 1840, from Nottingham to Seaforth, is hand-coloured and was described in Robson Lowe in September 82. The adhesive may not belong. Fair enough. I didn't know about that. When I bought it, it was in this state with no adhesive from the John Bone collection. I loved it because it was hand-coloured, very pretty. I thought this was super. Interestingly, as I went through my research in the Shaida collection, the Craveri sale, it actually stated no adhesive originally fixed. Remember what I've just said to you. There was something there. So no adhesive. In the Jim Picaro sale, no news about what had happened. In the Spink sale, it says traces of a red Maltese cross and an adhesive. The ink manuscript 1, presumably a faked edition. Maybe, maybe not. That is how it was when I bought it. Anyway, today, it now has an adhesive once again, which has been reapplied as it is perceived, or was perceived to be the original franking. When I tried to sell this particular item, I finished up with half of what I paid for it, because it was perceived to be adjusted and adulterated. Propaganda envelopes are far less susceptible to this problem because they are not such a high value, and so therefore less open perhaps to fraudulent use for monetary gain. But I show you just one example here. This is a ocean penny postage Bradshaw Blacklock design, State 4. Sold in the Phillips sale in 1992 with the description, India to London with 1854 1 anna red, other stamp or stamps have been removed. Top right-hand corner has been torn away. Now, it's not very visible on this particular image from the Phillips sale, but this corner has actually been cut away, and some kind person who wanted to collect the 1 anna stamp put it in their stamp collection. Next time this was seen was in Hobby Philately in 1993. Now it has a stamp in the right-hand corner. This is the same stamp that was originally on the second position on the envelope. So the cover has been repaired, the stamp has been moved to the corner, and it is being sold as a nice cover. It has, however, in the Hobby Philately auction catalogue, a statement, a single adhesive has been moved to the right, covering the torn corner. Okay. It was not sold. It was sold in the Phillips sale for £129. It was offered in Hobby Philately 10 years later at 3,000 Deutschmarks. So with 2.8, I believe, was the exchange rate at that time. So let's say £1,000. 8 times multiple for improving the cover. It was not sold either at Hobby Philately in 93, nor at Philly Fair in 94, nor again in Hobby Philately in April 94. Still estimated at 3,000 Deutschmarks. Not sold. When does it appear again? Last year at Siegel. This time with a Hedicott certificate from the 18th of May 93, so in the Hobby Philately era. A sale room notice from Siegel was given because I wrote to Siegel and said, are you aware, when I saw this catalogue, are you aware of the previous Phillips auction? They were not aware of the original sale. And so they said, okay, we better give a sale room notice out. So they said the stamp has been removed and placed in the original location subject to an extension. And that was how it was sold. Now, interesting, this cover, a nice copy, certainly. I stopped bidding at $1,000. Was sold for $10,500. And it would have an extension, and a BPA certificate has been given. The wording, which very kindly Siegel have sent me, the cover is genuine. By the way, they know I'm going to discuss this, so it's not a secret. The cover is genuine. The upper right corner of the cover, including the stamp, has been torn away and reinstated. The only other use of a 1 anna on an OPP cover bears a vertical strip of 3 and is from the same correspondence. Well, okay. I'm not an expertiser, but I have to say, if I received a certificate where it says genuine on it, I'm sure the buyer is delighted, but I don't believe that's the right word to use. Here is the other one from the Gross collection, now actually in the Hedecock collection. And this is the nice cover. This, how I would suggest, is how there were originally on the other cover. 3 adhesives originally on it.
Oh, there was a 2 anna green on the other one missing.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. So anyway, 3 annas seems to be the appropriate fee for sending a cover from India to London. Again, this was sold for $11,000. So this is the value of a nice cover without any adjustment. So anyway, to finish, a few comments. Will my hours in the library and at home reviewing hard copy auction catalogues be replaced by peering at a screen reviewing digitized copies? I hope not. Will it be possible to scan all digitized catalogues for AI to find the same number of recorded items? I don't believe so, but perhaps the IT wizards in the room can explain how. What will be the error rate in comparison with other methods? Will we find all the combinations that we've been able to list in the book? Will search platforms, whether it is Profi or the Stamp Auction Network, Philately Live, will they find these things in the same way? And will they find the items that have been adjusted? How should this type of data be recorded for future generations? Is the IT method in 25 the same as in 2050? Can hard copy really be substituted solely by electronic data? How do we ensure all data is captured correctly for the real long term? Because we're in this for not just one generation, but many generations. Thank you very much.
Richard, that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
I'm interested in the states, and I'm glad that I'm glad that auction catalogues don't have state 1, state 2, and state 3. Otherwise, you'd have 120 meters of
That's true.
library. Yeah, I was interested when you said that there was going to be that you'd already found some additions that weren't in a book,
Yeah.
and you mentioned for a future author in some time. There's always a supplement, you know.
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, the rules, as I understand it, of the Royal is that they never produce a second printing.
No, but we regularly print addenda coriander.
Yeah, so supplement
But
would be
anyway,
very
the
good.
coriander is already being put together. I have so far 30 items in the coriander. So as days go by and catalogues are found, as new items come up at auction catalogues, all the listings will be put together, so we won't lose anything. It can be produced either as a coriander, if that is appropriate. It could be produced as an addition to the second book. It all depends, I guess, how long I'm on this earth. But anyway, there we see.
Brilliant. And we have time for a couple of questions from the floor. And I can see that we got one question there from John, and then Chris King. So, John.
I'm interested in the process that you followed when you turned up here at the Royal and started to look at auction catalogues. Did you choose one auction house and go through sequentially? How did you manage your time here at the Royal?
That's a very interesting question, actually. I started with the first 30 catalogues that I mentioned held the main number of items as a result of Robin's experience. So he said, have a look at these. So I actually went for those first big auction catalogues with a large number of items in first. And then I thought, well, how am I going to do this sensibly, as you quite rightly say? So I started at A, and then went alphabetically through the catalogues in the at Devonshire Place, and that's how I did it. It was in a. I have to say, as I went along, I missed out ones that I didn't think were going to produce anything, like a Finsa, for instance. As far as I know, even having looked at them afterwards, there has never been a Mulready catalogue actually listed in an Al-Finsa catalogue. So be it, anyway.
Thank you very much.
That's how I did it.
Chris?
Richard, thank you. That was wonderful. John Bone's son is my next-door neighbour opposite.
Oh, yeah.
And I cleared his house of auction catalogues, incidentally. Do you have any sense of the survival rate? Because with all these states, they must have been produced on a daily basis, consecutively.
Yeah.
There must have been do you have a sense of the numbers that were made in the first place?
We're not absolutely sure, Chris. I don't think we know. But certainly Hume, he produced over 1 million envelopes. So it's something of the order of 1%, 2%. Valentine produced 3 million propaganda envelopes, and there's something like 400 still going. So I think it's something of the order of 1%, 2%, something like that.
Thank you very much. And one more question.
One observation on the question of corrigenda is that you can produce a hard copy book and put your updates on the internet, and you can update that daily so people can look at it, and then when it accumulates to a large amount, you could of course produce another hard copy supplement or something like that. So
Well,
a mixed
that is
approach.
certainly a possibility. Maybe that's something we could consider. It should be online as available on an ongoing basis so people could look at it. I don't know. That's something we could certainly think about, I agree. Because it would be a pity to lose the up-to-dateness of the book, if I might call it that. So if there's some way to do that on an ongoing basis, maybe publish it every quarter or something when it's been checked carefully, something like that. Good idea.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Richard, once again, thank you very much indeed. Superb presentation.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.